what I think is a pretty big story with this environmental conference going on in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. We've talked before, and we talked a couple days last week about how large the Canadian delegation is. We've got small town mayors from Blue Mountains and Guelph and other places over getting wined and dined for 9-10 days straight by the United Arab Emirates. And we're also doing a lot in terms of telling the developing world exactly how they should be behaving with regard to the environment. So I came across a video yesterday morning from a Kenyan farmer. We're going to speak to him live in just a minute or two. But here's Jesper Machugo talking about fossil fuels being needed in Africa for development.
We need fossil fuels to better our lives. We need fossil fuels for economic development. You guys preaching to us, the Western governments and environmental organizations preaching to us about climate change. Climate change is not a big problem to Africans. We have far bigger problems. We have people sleeping hungry. We have people who are very poor. We have people without electricity. We have people who don't have access to clean water. Those are our big problems. We have people cooking with firewood. And you telling us that we should care about the environment, about climate change. But we are going to say no to neocolonialism in the name of climate change. We should be all about human flourishing, Africans developing. And that's my message.
And Jesper Machugo joins us now on Toronto Today. I loved your video. It meant a lot to me. I know that we've got climate issues here in our continent, around the world. I know there's ways we can utilize fewer fossil fuels. I find it really rich and hypocritical, Jesper, for us to tell you, a developing country, that clean water access, cooking with gas and oil, is something that we've done for centuries, but we should prevent you from doing, correct?
Correct. Especially the UN.
And why do you make that distinction with the United Nations? That makes...
So right now, the United Nations is very busy preaching to Africans on sustainable development goals. So they had like a very nice framework. So they came to Africa, looked at our biggest problems. And after that, so they set up like solutions for those problems. So they have like 16 plus climate change, so 17 problems, and they have solutions for those problems. And the funny thing is, every other solution to these problems, be it poverty, be it hunger, clean water, clean cooking, every other solution is centered around climate change. So we're going to do it sustainably. So sustainable development goals. And that's hurting us because, so the UN is saying right now, climate change is being caused by humans burning fossil fuels. Mm-hmm. So that means, like, if they want to curb climate change, if they want to control climate change or prevent it from happening, the 1.5 degrees centigrade they're talking about, that means that Africa should not burn its fossil fuels. That's what the UN is doing. And I find it so, I'd say ironical, because I think back in 2008, the UN had an article out, The Benefits of World Hunger. That's the title of that article, which they deleted eventually. But I don't think the UN has got Africans. They don't have our best interests at heart.
When I see things at charts that show fossil fuel use, they coincide with an improved water source. The more fossil fuels we're able to utilize, because you need pipes and you need irrigation. So much of that is from plastics. So much of that is from oil. If the more fossil fuels we use in continents like Africa, the cleaner the water is for more African people. Correct?
Correct. And I find it so ridiculous that we are discussing climate change in Africa, where 1 in 5 people sleep hungry. 1 in 3 are extremely poor. And over 70%, actually, I think about 70% rely on farming for livelihood, compared to 2% in the US. And these people cannot even afford clean cooking. We are using cow dung to cook. We are using charcoal to cook. We are using, like in Kenya, 70% of our energy is coming from burning biomass. Biomass is basically firewood, charcoal, cow dung, and stuff like that, crop residue. It's so ridiculous.
Explain to people in Toronto why that's dangerous. It's dangerous to cook with firewood inside. It's dangerous to cook with dung, isn't it?
It's very dangerous. And it's not clean. It's going to affect your eyes. It's going to affect how you breathe. it's not clean at all. You can't compare that to cooking using LPG or LNG.
What are you hoping that the developed world hears when someone like you speaks out, bravely so, from the developing world and says, we understand that you have your goals. How do we meet in the middle and make this work?
So I hope the West can realize that solar and wind and hydrogen and green hydrogen didn't develop their countries. It didn't develop the economies. What did was fossil fuels. And when they're telling us use solar and wind, show me one country which is using solar, one city or one town which is using solar and wind entirely. And maybe then you can preach to us about solar and wind. Otherwise, we have got plenty of fossil fuels. We have it under our feet. That's what we should be banning to better our lives.
And there's a way to do it more with more care and more cleanly than we did 50 years ago. But I agree, we have to let you do it. Let's stay in touch on this issue. I'm so glad you came on the air with me in Toronto today, Jesper. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
Jesper,
I hope the kangaroo is born.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Jesper Machugo joining us.
This is Toronto Today with Greg Brady.
Toronto's news, today's talk.
640 Toronto.
Ben Mulrooney joining us for the next several minutes as well. Ben, many people saw Paul Hogan make a big star of himself in Crocodile Dundee, his inevitable sequel, Crocodile Dundee 2. Not many people went to see him in the movie Wayward Marsupial. I don't know why that didn't work. The trailer looked great.
I mean, I'm actually thinking of going onto redbubble.com and making a t-shirt that says Wayward Marsupial. Like, I think that's an awesome name.
With a map of Oshawa.
No, are you kidding? Wayward Marsupial? That's a great name. I'd love it. I'm gonna make it. I swear, I'm gonna make a t-shirt.
So
I'm so glad that he said that with a little bit of humor in his mouth, in his voice, because that's how this story should be approached, with the care and concern that the animal was found safe. But beyond that, it's a fun story.
I'll show you the photo. Yesterday, a friend of mine I don't know anybody, but I know people who know people. That's in the process. I know. The 3 minutes later,
she must have been
after
so
the capture,
scared.
they've got the roo captured.
She must have been so scared.
And it's a female kangaroo. Yeah. Nathan. So there's questions there. I'd like to see sort of an origin story for Nathan, the female kangaroo.
Hey,
whatever. I don't judge. It's 2023.
My dog's name is Bruce Wayne, and it's a girl. Her name is Miss Bruce Wayne Mulrooney.
But it does. We brought it up earlier. The stretching of the legs.
Great.
Where's this kangaroo going to? And I showed my wife video. We went to Busch Gardens about 4 years ago in Tampa, and the kids were able to feed the kangaroos lettuce. But the kangaroos all looked like kind of lethargic and sleepy. How do you feel when you go to zoos? Is it odd? Is it you're like, should they be here?
I think the best ones in the world take really good care of their animals, and they do a lot of good work, a lot of scientific research. Those are the best ones in the world. And the word zoo applies to a broad spectrum of organizations. Right? So there's some great places. And look, not every zoo in the world should have every animal in the world. Certain ones belong in certain temperatures and others belong in others. So I think if we could play by certain rules and appreciate the logic of what I just said, then I think you could end up having some really great places. And some people cannot travel to see the world. It would be great if everybody could go to Africa and go on a photo safari, but that's not the case. And so I think having a zoo at the disposal of people who can that expose themselves to certain experiences that they otherwise wouldn't have is of benefit. I don't think we should end the conversation by saying, "Oh, animals shouldn't be in captivity." In certain cases, it makes sense.
It's a weird thing with the Oshawa Zoo because I guess there's a bylaw that says you can't have kangaroos, but this particular Oshawa Zoo, it's grandfathered in. You know how guys were able to play in the NHL without helmets? Yeah. After Brad Marsh is skating around without a helmet, it's like that with zoos.
But what I want to know, it's not just a zoo; it's a zoo and fun farm.
Absolutely.
I want to know.
You got to put the second part in.
Tell me more about this fun farm aspect of the zoo.
Joanne Bordelis is from Durham Region Police Services and checking in with us to put a bow on this story. Joanne, thanks very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Your phone's probably been pretty active since yesterday morning, but that said, this didn't have to have a happy ending. And when we saw this on our show yesterday, that your officers had captured the kangaroo, we were all pretty relieved. I sent that text message out of the photo to so many people that were just happy that the kangaroo's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very happy with the outcome, and she got checked out, and as far as I know, she's doing quite well.
It's Ben Mulrooney here. First of all, congratulations on catching the kangaroo. I was following this on Twitter.
It's smart to listen to CFIQ. We are 640 Toronto, a Chorus Entertainment company.
From the National Newsroom of the Canadian Press, I'm Brenda Molina Navidad. The UN General Assembly has scheduled an emergency meeting on Tuesday to vote on a draft resolution demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. The Palestinian ambassador to the UN says it's similar to the Security Council resolution the U.S. vetoed last week. There are no vetoes in the General Assembly, but unlike the Security Council, its resolutions are not legally binding. BC has announced a new 3-year action plan that includes building more housing for women and children leaving violence, expanding self-service to make travel safer, and adding 75 new sexual assault support programs. Amy Fitzgerald of the BC Society of Transition Houses says the organization welcomes the investments, but it's still not enough.
We welcome the investment and we welcome building new houses and assuring that women, children, and youth have a safe place to go when they make that brave choice to leave. That's the hardest choice. And when they make it, there should be accessible housing because no one should have to choose between homelessness and violence.
The province's plan also includes establishing new free virtual counseling, as well as new 24/7 crisis lines, new policing standards, and stronger victim support services. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu is expected to table much anticipated legislation to improve water quality in First Nations communities as early as tomorrow.
The bill comes more than a year after Canada repealed previous legislation on safe drinking water for First Nations and 2 years after a federal court ruling approved a massive $8 billion settlement related to drinking water advisories. Hajdu said in an interview with the Canadian Press this fall that the coming legislation is the closest the federal government has come to co-developing law with First Nations. But some First Nations chiefs are disputing that assertion. Still, Hajdu's office is not providing any more information about what's in the bill before it is tabled. Rob Westgate, the Canadian Press.
The anime film The Boy and the Heron is #1 at the box office this weekend.
Your mother. She's awaiting your rescue.
The Boy and the Heron, the latest film from legendary anime filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki, is the #1 draw for moviegoers this week. It debuted with $12.8 million in North American theaters, according to studio estimates. It's only the third anime to be #1 ever, and the first original anime to be #1. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is in second place. Godzilla -1 is third. Trolls Band Together is #4, and Wish is #5. I'm Margie Zaraletta.
About 300 Santas dressed in red took a break from the holiday hustle to hit the slopes at a ski resort in western Maine. The annual event raises money for a local charity. This is the Canadian Press.
And welcome out to the show. Thanks for joining us this week on the Curious Cast Podcast Hour. My name is Dunner from the Curious Cast Podcast Network, where we make podcasts for curious people. I want to welcome everyone who is joining us from across the country. We're so glad to be live on Chorus Radio News Talk stations from Vancouver to Toronto and all points in between. We created this show, if this is your very first time listening, for us to celebrate the world of audio entertainment and education that comes from podcasting. We hear about podcasts now in so many different places we never heard about them before. We talk about them with friends. We exchange links to podcasts we're really enjoying, and that's what we wanted to do here. Maybe turn you on to one of your new favorite shows, and every single week on this show, we feature a different episode from a different podcast for you to check out and get a taste of what they're up to. With more than 2.5 million choices on Apple Podcasts alone, and that's just one platform, if there's a podcast out there that you can dream about, probably already exists somewhere with more and more choices appearing every day. All right, let's get on to today's show. History of the 90s, our featured podcast today, sounds just like it is. Host Kathy Kinzora does such an exceptional job telling stories about all the people, trends, and events that mattered in the 90s. And when you think about it, the 90s were kind of a decade like no other. It's probably pretty strange to think about the fact that in 1994, most people were still carrying around pagers. It doesn't seem that long ago, and yet it's such a lifetime ago when you think about technology now.
It's no surprise Kathy's won so many awards along the way for this podcast, with more than 120 episodes available for you to check out right now. She's also racked up a couple Canadian podcast awards along the way. Today's featured episode is all about a figure in the 90s that floated the tabloid press for seemingly years. An undeniably beautiful 26-year-old girl from Texas. She would become a guest model and a centerfold, and eventually the 93 Playmate of the Year. In addition to that, she would become an actress showing up in several films. She married an oil tycoon named J. Howard Marshall, and her story was everywhere, plastered on the cover of magazines or tabloid television. Her struggles with addiction in the headlines seemingly every day, and her death 13 years after she got married was nothing less than tragic. We'll take you now to our host, Kathy Kenzora, for the story behind the life and death of Anna Nicole Smith from History of the 90s, our featured podcast today on the Curious Cast Podcast Hour.
It was an early summer day in Houston when a very tall and very pretty bride arrived at the White Dove Wedding Chapel with her long blonde hair piled high in curlers. She changed into a full-length white satin wedding gown with puffy sleeves, a bow at the back, and a very low-cut neckline. The 26-year-old Texas beauty pulled her hair out of the curlers and put the finishing touches on her makeup. Then she walked down the aisle of the small, sunny chapel. The groom waiting for her was a wheelchair-bound oil tycoon who had showered the young woman with jewelry, cars, and property until she finally agreed to marry him. When they met, she was a stripper with aspirations of becoming a model. By the time he slipped a 22-carat diamond wedding ring on her finger a few years later, she was one of the most talked about women in pop culture. I'm Kathy Kenzora, and this is History of the 90s, a podcast about a decade that changed the world. On this episode, we look back at the life and tragic death of a 90s icon. This is the story of Anna Nicole Smith. Born Vicki Lynn Hogan, Anna Nicole Smith grew up in Mahia, Texas, a small town in the Bible Belt, 2.5 hours north of Houston. According to her family, she craved attention from an early age. And by the time she was a teenager, Anna Nicole dreamed of moving away from her sleepy hometown to become a model. But that wasn't in the cards, at least not yet. Instead, she dropped out of high school and took a job at Jim's Crispy Fried Chicken. That's where she met and then married Billy Smith. She was 17, he was just 16. Within months, she was pregnant with their son Daniel. Despite becoming a mother, Anna Nicole still dreamed of being rich and famous. So after the whirlwind marriage, she and baby Daniel moved to Houston in 1986, leaving Billy Smith behind in Mahia. Once in Houston, Anna Nicole got a job waiting tables at Red Lobster, but she quickly realized being a stripper would earn her way more money. She tried out several different strip clubs, making between $50 and $200 a day. But it wasn't until she started working at a place called Gigi's that she met the wealthy man that would change her life. J. Howard Marshall II was worth at least $500 million on the day his driver pulled up to Gigi's in a Mercedes sedan. It was lunchtime, and Anna Nicole was working the day shift. Her boss thought she needed to lose weight before she would be good enough for the night crowd. Marshall thought differently. When he looked at Anna Nicole, he saw perfection. Born in 1905, J. Howard Marshall II studied law at Yale and then worked in the oil industry, arriving in Houston in the 1960s. He made his fortune from having shares in Koch Industries, the massive U.S. multinational conglomerate started by Fred Koch and then split between his 4 sons. Before meeting Anna Nicole, Marshall was married twice and had a high-profile and contentious relationship with a Houston topless dancer turned socialite known as Lady Walker. When he saw Anna Nicole on stage at Gigi's dancing to Krista Berg's Lady in Red, he asked for a lap dance. Then he asked her to lunch. The next day, they met at a hotel and ordered room service. According to an article in Interview magazine, when Anna Nicole complained that she had to get back to work, Marshall handed her an envelope with 10 $100 bills. and said, quote, "Don't go to work, my lady love. You don't have to ever go back to work." Over the next few months, he showered the single mom with expensive gifts and gave her access to one of his houses situated on a 5-acre property in North Houston that included a barn with horses and a swimming pool. But Anna Nicole wasn't content with being a rich man's mistress. She had much bigger dreams, and they were about to start coming true. In 1992, Anna Nicole mailed some provocative pictures of herself to Playboy magazine, which landed her on the cover in March of that year. She was styled as a debutante in an emerald green low-cut gown and gold silk gloves. The magazine's longtime West Coast photo editor, Marilyn Grabowski, said that she had never seen a more beautiful woman without makeup. But Anna Nicole was terrified at first to undress in front of Grabowski and her team. She asked to put on a record to help calm her nerves. It was Marilyn Monroe singing "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend," which was fitting because, you see, Anna Nicole was obsessed with Marilyn Monroe. And as soon as she put the record on, Grabowski says Anna Nicole was no longer the scared young girl from a small town in Texas. Instead, she now embodied the star she was about to become. The Playboy exposure did something that rarely happens. It opened a door for Anna Nicole that led her into mainstream modeling. Following the March 92 cover, Anna Nicole was named Playmate of the Month in May of that year, which meant she was the centerfold for that month's publication. Her photos in the magazine caught the attention of Paul Marciano, co-founder and president of the fashion brand Guess. Marciano flew her to New York, got her an agent, and signed her to a 3-year contract as the new face of Guess, replacing Claudia Schiffer. In fact, it was Marciano who changed her name from Vicky Smith to Anna Nicole Smith. By December 1992, Anna Nicole could be seen in a massive billboard campaign as well as multi-page ads in multiple magazines, including Interview, Harper's Bazaar, and Vanity Fair. The campaign featured the now 25-year-old resembling the 1950s bombshell Jane Mansfield in a vintage-styled shoot, wearing sequin gowns and leopard platform sandals. Ironically, little of her clothing in the ads was actually sold by Guess. But regardless, almost immediately, Anna Nicole became the new it girl. She signed with the elite modeling agency in New York and landed parts in 2 Hollywood movies, The Hudsucker Proxy with Paul Newman and Naked Gun 33 1/3. The next year, during a ceremony at the Playboy Mansion, Hugh Hefner named Anna Nicole the 1993 Playmate of the Year.
Well, first of all, we have a little check here for $100,000.
The big check.
Sitting out in front of the house is also a Jaguar XJS, a convertible in oyster metallic doe skin, and this is the keys for that.
Thank you.
The fame and recognition came with attention to Anna Nicole's weight. A spokesperson for Guess described Anna Nicole this way to the media. "She's not the stick figure other girls are. She's much more voluptuous, like a 1950s movie star." Lots was said in the media about her curvy figure, which is shocking considering at 5'11", she weighed just 140 pounds, which is by no means large. In fact, if you go by the BMI, the body mass index, she was at the low end of normal weight, just 1 point above a classification of underweight. Listen to this uncomfortable exchange between Larry King and Anna Nicole on his show in 1993.
"Are you overweight? Really, are you over?"
Yes, sir, I am.
Larry.
Larry, I
Make
am.
me feel older than I am.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you are overweight. No, really,
I don't
because
know.
in the
To me,
40s
I
or
am.
50s, in the Monroe era, you were fantastic.
Well, to me, I feel overweight. People, I mean, I don't know.
As Anna Nicole's star was rising, she was already struggling with a drug addiction. During her days at the strip club, she had undergone 2 breast enlargement surgeries, which supersized her to a double D cup. It's believed that following one of those procedures, she became dependent on painkillers, a habit that came with dangerous consequences.
If you're just joining us today, our featured podcast comes from the award-winning show History of the 90s. Our episode today is all about an interesting and tragic character from the 90s, Anna Nicole Smith, whose name and story floated tabloid television and magazines for seemingly years. It's an incredible and, as I said, tragic story, but one certainly worth remembering, told so well by History of the 90s, and we'll be back with much more after this on the Curious Cast Podcast Hour. Welcome back. If you're just joining us today, our featured podcast comes courtesy of the award-winning show History of the 90s with Kathy Kinzora. It's a podcast that's covered every trend, person, and moment that mattered in the 1990s, and Kathy does such a great job telling these stories. There are more than 120 episodes of this podcast available for you to check out, and we'll take you back now to our host, Kathy Kinzora, and the life and death of Anna Nicole Smith, our featured episode today on the Curious Cast Podcast Hour.
On Friday, February 11th, 1994, Anna Nicole and a 20-year-old friend named Daniel Ross checked into the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills. Early the next morning, paramedics were called to their luxury suite for reports of a possible overdose. Both Anna Nicole and Daniel Ross were rushed to hospital where they were treated and released. Police said they each had traces of tequila, Vicodin, and Xanax in their systems. But investigators deemed the incident accidental and no charges were laid. There were reports in the media at the time that Anna Nicole and Daniel had a heated argument before the overdose. But Anna Nicole's publicist said there was nothing sinister about what happened, saying his client was suffering from a bad migraine when she checked into the hotel. Several weeks later, Anna Nicole herself denied having mixed alcohol and drugs, saying the reported overdose was the worst thing ever written about her. She said, quote, "It's so fiction, you know, just to say something like that is so mean." There were other troubles too. Prior to the overdose, Anna Nicole was sued by a former publicist for breach of contract. And then in May 1994, a former nanny filed a $2 million lawsuit against the model, accusing her of assault and sexual assault. A month later, in June 1994, Anna Nicole was in the news yet again, but this time for a happier occasion. Remember the elderly man she met at Gigi's, the oil tycoon? Well, J. Howard Marshall II was still in the picture, continuing to shower her with gifts, including hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry and her own house in North Houston, where Anna Nicole now lived with her young son. Marshall repeatedly asked Anna Nicole to marry him, and finally, she said yes. Following their wedding service attended by 11 people, Anna Nicole and Marshall released 2 white doves outside the small Houston chapel. Back inside, there was a brief reception of cake and champagne. Then Anna Nicole kissed her wheelchair-bound husband before jetting off to Greece for a photo shoot. The marriage caused an avalanche of media coverage. It seemed there was no limit to the public's fascination with Anna Nicole Smith. But there was one person in particular who was watching the marriage extremely closely. Marshall's son from his first marriage, 55-year-old Pierce Marshall. His father's shares in Koch Industries were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And with the 89-year-old in frail health, the issue of who would inherit the fortune was top of mind for his son. Plus, the elder Marshall had an established track record of giving away his money to beautiful women. I mentioned that before meeting Anna Nicole, Marshall had a high-profile romance with Diane Walker, who most people called Lady, a childhood nickname. They met in 1982 when Lady Walker was working as a topless dancer at the Chic Lounge in Houston. She was 42, he was 77. Marshall paid for a private dance that night and within a few weeks had bought her a Cadillac, quickly followed by a house and a big diamond ring. The rich Texas oil man was completely smitten with the brunette with a flawless complexion and legs that went on forever. At the time, Marshall was still married to his second wife, Betty Marshall, who was ill with Alzheimer's. But that didn't stop him from taking Lady Walker to Houston's finest and flashiest restaurants several times a week. Lady turned heads every time she entered a room, usually wearing an enormous hat with matching accessories and a white fur coat. People couldn't help but stare at her. She became a flamboyant Houston socialite, followed closely by society reporters. Marshall showered Lady Walker with expensive gifts, hundreds of thousands of dollars in jewelry, couture gowns, and luxury cars. This went on for 10 years, with Marshall promising Lady they would marry when his wife died. But that didn't happen, because Lady Walker died first. In July 1991, Lady died from a congenital brain defect during a facelift. She was 51 years old. Marshall's wife, Betty, died 2 months later. Devastated by the two losses, Marshall fell into a deep despair. According to an article in New York Magazine, he spent most days asleep or drunk on Johnnie Walker Black Label. To make matters worse, turns out Lady Walker had a secret boyfriend who, unbeknownst to Marshall, was living with her before she died. When Marshall found out, he was furious and decided to take revenge. Lady Walker had left millions of dollars worth of jewels and fur coats to her 2 adult daughters. She even left her secret boyfriend $10,000 in cash, a truck, and a diamond bracelet. Remember, everything Lady Walker owned had been gifted to her from Marshall. So with the guidance of his son Pierce, he sued her estate, demanding they give everything back. In the end, Lady Walker's family agreed to settle out of court, returning almost everything in her $5.8 million estate to Marshall. As you can imagine, this lawsuit became a media sensation in Houston. And it showed the lengths that Marshall's son Pierce was prepared to go to protect his father's money and his inheritance. Following his dad's marriage to Anna Nicole, Pierce successfully petitioned the court to become power of attorney over J. Howard Marshall's assets, stripping the elder Marshall of control over his own money. According to the recent Netflix documentary Anna Nicole Smith, You Don't Know Me, Pierce even forced Anna Nicole to return jewelry bought for her by her husband without Pierce's approval. It was an uncomfortable arrangement that long-term would most certainly be impossible to abide by. But it would soon be unnecessary.
If you're just joining us today, our featured podcast is all about the life and death of Anna Nicole Smith. It's a captivating story, to say the very least. A 26-year-old exotic dancer from Texas who became a guest model, a playmate, actually Playmate of the Year in 1993. She was on the cover of every magazine and essentially floated tabloid television for years. She married an oil tycoon named J. Howard Marshall, and 13 years later, a tragic death. The life and times of Anna Nicole Smith. Our featured episode today on the Curious Cast podcast hour is from history of the 90s, and we'll be back with much more right after these on the Curious Cast podcast hour. Welcome back. If you're just joining us today, our featured podcast comes courtesy of the award-winning show History of the 90s with Kathy Kinzora. It's a podcast that's covered every trend, person, and moment that mattered in the 1990s, and Kathy does such a great job telling these stories. There are more than 120 episodes of this podcast available for you to check out, and we'll take you back now to our host, Kathy Kinzora, and the life and death of Anna Nicole Smith, our featured episode today on the Curious Cast podcast hour.
After their wedding, Anna Nicole and her new husband didn't spend much time together because she mostly lived in Los Angeles and Marshall lived in Texas. He called her frequently, though, sometimes dozens of times a day. At this point, however, Anna Nicole's drug use was intensifying, and she was usually preoccupied when he called. So in December 1994, Marshall flew out to Los Angeles to visit her. When he arrived, she was in bed, and he decided to join her. As his driver lifted him out of his wheelchair, Anna Nicole responded, "Oh no, Papa, you know you don't get up in bed with me. You pee the bed." When Marshall returned to Texas, his health worsened, and he was eventually hospitalized with stomach cancer. Pierce Marshall, who had assumed temporary guardianship of his father, refused to let Anna Nicole visit her ailing husband, and he also cut her off from his money. On August 4th, 1995, John Howard Marshall II succumbed to his illness. He was 90 years old. At Marshall's funeral, Anna Nicole wore her wedding dress, complete with veil, while her 9-year-old son Daniel also wore his white tuxedo from the wedding. During the service, Anna Nicole and her son stood up and offered the Bette Midler song, "Wind Beneath My Wings," in honor of all that Marshall had done for them. The death of Marshall wasn't a surprise, and neither was what happened next. An epic battle between Anna Nicole Smith and Pierce Marshall over who would inherit the fortune left behind by the oil tycoon with a soft spot for pretty women. Despite his professed love of Anna Nicole, his lady love as he called her, Marshall's will left her nothing. Everything went to Pierce. Even his other son, J. Howard Marshall III, was excluded. Anna Nicole insisted that he had promised her half of his vast fortune. So in the days following Marshall's death, she initiated a legal battle that would last 25 years as it made its way to the highest court in the land. Meantime, Anna Nicole had another legal battle to deal with. Remember that lawsuit filed by a nanny who had worked for her, alleging Anna Nicole had assaulted and sexually assaulted her? Well, it had not gone away. Maria Serrato claimed in the $2 million suit that Anna Nicole plied her with drugs and alcohol to have sex with her and threatened to deport her if she didn't. Anna Nicole countered that it was Maria who took advantage of her and accused the nanny of trying to kidnap Daniel. Shortly after Marshall's death, Anna Nicole was scheduled to provide a deposition in the case, but she repeatedly didn't show up at the courthouse. Anna Nicole was struggling with health issues after undergoing surgery to remove benign lumps in her breasts, which led to an infection and another surgery. The judge eventually got fed up with the no-shows and in August 1995 ruled in favor of the nanny and ordered Anna Nicole to pay her $800,000. This was money she didn't have, so Anna Nicole was forced to file for bankruptcy protection. Through it all, Anna Nicole struggled to stay afloat. She took huge quantities of pills, overdosed at least once, tried to detox at the Betty Ford Center, but relapsed and was back on drugs within a few months of her release. Her career was suffering too. The William Morris Talent Agency dropped her, so she signed with a small legal firm on Rodeo Drive, hoping the lawyers there could help relaunch her career. One of the partners at the firm was 29-year-old Howard K. Stern, a man that would figure prominently for the rest of Anna Nicole's life. Meantime, the case regarding J. Howard Marshall's inheritance was in and out of court. Lawyers attacked it from all different angles, hoping something would stick. With that much money at stake, things were extremely complicated. The matter was simultaneously addressed in both bankruptcy court in Los Angeles as well as probate court in Houston. And every time Anna Nicole was called to testify, there was sure to be fireworks. In particular, between Anna Nicole and Pierce Marshall's lawyer, Rusty Harlan, who was not impressed when she cried on the stand.
Have you been taking new acting lessons?
Screw you, Rusty.
And there was this exchange when Anna Nicole gazed at her nails while Rusty Harlan was asking her questions.
Are you trying to suggest you want a nail file or anything?
If you got one.
At one point, the bankruptcy court ruled in Anna Nicole's favor and awarded her $450 million. But lawyers for Pierce Marshall challenged the ruling, arguing the California court did not have jurisdiction. As Anna Nicole's financial future remained in limbo, she was in desperate need of finding a new source of income. Most of her modeling and acting opportunities had dried up. But there was a new form of entertainment dominating the TV airwaves at the turn of the century, and Anna Nicole decided to cash in. The Anna Nicole Show debuted on the E! Cable channel in August 2002. Over 7.5 million people tuned in to the first episode of the reality show that featured Anna Nicole along with her 16-year-old son Daniel, Howard K. Stern, her lawyer, and Kim, her personal assistant. Those numbers set a record at the time, making Anna Nicole's show the best debut ever on E! It even outdid Keeping Up with the Kardashians, which was watched by just under 3 million people when it premiered 7 years later. But Anna Nicole's series didn't have the same staying power. The show, which often featured a slurring Anna Nicole who appeared to be moving in slow motion as she went about her day-to-day activities, only lasted for 2 seasons. However, executives at E! Stressed that the Anna Nicole Show wasn't axed because of bad ratings. Ratings were down by about 50%, but they insisted they were still good. Instead, they said the series wouldn't return because it wasn't creatively where they wanted it to be. Following the cancellation of her show, Anna Nicole turned her focus to something else, losing weight. Over the years, her weight had gone up and down, a matter that was followed closely by late-night talk show host and radio shock jock Howard Stern. Stern and his co-hosts each guessed how much they thought Anna Nicole weighed before bringing her into the studio. Then Stern proceeded to try and pressure her to get on the scale.
And I was going to say to you today, can you please get on the scale and then we'll have an over-under. That's all.
No.
Why not? Why not?
I'm not going to get on a scale if you got to weigh me.
Recently, clips of that humiliating experience made the rounds on TikTok, shocking a new generation, which has made strides in removing the shame around different body sizes. But at the time, sadly, it was quite common for Anna Nicole to be treated this way. Regardless, after that incident, Anna Nicole did lose weight. In fact, she reportedly dropped 69 pounds in 8 months. She said it was thanks to a weight loss supplement called Trim Spa. Then she became a spokesperson for the New Jersey-based company, appearing in TV commercials that characterized the weight loss as the beginning of a comeback for Anna Nicole.
Get the attention you deserve.
Anna, how did you do it?
Trim Spa, baby.
The endorsement deal paid Anna Nicole $500,000 a year, and it caused Trim Spa sales to skyrocket. Although the company was eventually forced by the FDA to pay a fine of $1.5 million for making unsubstantiated claims regarding the effectiveness of the diet pill. And sadly, Trim Spa and the weight loss didn't really lead to a comeback for Anna Nicole. She still struggled with a drug addiction that by now had gotten out of control. Among the many drugs prescribed to her by doctors was the opioid methadone. Larry Burkhead started dating Anna Nicole after the pair met in 2003 at the Barnstable Brown Gala, which is held the night before the Kentucky Derby. Anna Nicole was in Kentucky filming her reality show, and Burkhead says when she spotted him, she kept trying to wave him over and blew kisses at him. Burkhead was a celebrity photographer and was eventually hired to take photos of Smith at a camp for children living with HIV, which was also filmed for her reality show. The two eventually started a romantic relationship, and Burkhead moved from Kentucky to Los Angeles to live with her. The relationship was tumultuous. Burkhead says he packed his bags several times prepared to leave. And then in April 2006, following a fight, Anna Nicole took off for the Bahamas, leaving him behind. But Anna Nicole wasn't alone in Bahamas. Joining her was lawyer and companion Howard K. Stern, who was never far from her side. And 2 months after leaving LA for the Caribbean island, Anna Nicole revealed some big news in a video on her website.
Yes, I am pregnant. I'm happy. I'm very, very happy about it. Everything's going really, really good.
Anna Nicole, who was floating in a pool while making this announcement, promised to keep her fans posted as she grows. But she didn't reveal who the father was. Larry Burkhead was quick to tell TMZ that he was the dad. But when Anna Nicole delivered her baby daughter, Danny Lynn, by cesarean on September 7th, 2006, in a hospital in Nassau, Bahamas, she put a different name on the birth certificate. She put Howard K. Stern. Anna Nicole's longtime lawyer was listed as Danny Lynn's biological father. But the paternity issue was put on hold when something terribly tragic rocked Anna Nicole's world.
If you're just joining us today, our featured podcast is all about the life and death of Anna Nicole Smith. It's a captivating story to say the very least. A 26-year-old exotic dancer from Texas who became a guest model, a playmate, actually Playmate of the Year in 1993. She was on the cover of every magazine and essentially floated tabloid television for years. She married an oil tycoon named J. Howard Marshall, and 13 years later, a tragic death. The Life and Times of Anna Nicole Smith. Our featured episode today on the Curious Cast podcast hour is from History of the 90s, and we'll be back with much more right after these on the Curious Cast podcast hour. Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, today our featured episode is all about a figure that was on the lips of everyone seemingly in the 1990s. Her name was Anna Nicole Smith. A model from Texas who would be on the cover of every magazine. She would be on Guess ads. And tragically, she would die 13 years after marrying an oil tycoon from Texas named J. Howard Marshall. Her death was tragic, and in many ways, so was her life. We'll take you back now to our host, Kathy Kinzora, from History of the 90s, our featured podcast today on the Curious Cast Podcast Hour.
On September 10th, 3 days after Danny Lynn was born, Anna Nicole's 20-year-old son traveled to Bahamas to meet his new sister. Anna Nicole was thrilled to see Daniel, and she insisted that he crawl into bed with her and the baby for a nap. For a fleeting moment, they were a perfect little family. Then, when Anna Nicole woke up from her nap, she turned to her son, and she knew right away that something was wrong. Daniel was dead from an accidental overdose of methadone and the antidepressant Zoloft and Lexapro. Anna Nicole was inconsolable. She had lost the one person she believed loved her unconditionally. She didn't want to live anymore, and the only reason she was holding on was her new baby, Danny Lynn. In the midst of the despair, there was still the matter of the identity of the baby's father. On September 26th, Howard K. Stern went on Larry King Live and declared that he was the baby daddy. 2 days later, Stern and Anna Nicole were married on a catamaran off the coast of Nassau. But a spokesperson for the couple said the ceremony, which took place at 3 a.m, was not legally binding. They had, quote, exchanged vows before God, but did not obtain a marriage license. And there was no time for a honeymoon. 4 days after the impromptu wedding, Anna Nicole's ex, Larry Burkhead, filed a lawsuit demanding that she and Danny Lynn return to California for a paternity test. Burkhead said he took the dramatic step because Anna Nicole had not responded to any of his attempts to reach out to her. In December 2006, a judge sided with Burkhead and gave Anna Nicole until January 23, 2007 to have Danny Lynn undergo DNA testing. On the day in question, Anna Nicole failed to show, and a court hearing on the matter was scheduled for February 7, 2007. Meantime, Anna Nicole's mental and physical health was rapidly deteriorating. As she mourned her son's death and dealt with postpartum depression, she turned to her doctors for help. Records show that over a 5-week period, her psychiatrist prescribed over 1,800 pills, plus a bottle of the sedative chloral hydrate, an out-of-date treatment for insomnia. A pharmacist filling Anna Nicole's prescription warned that the drugs amounted to pharmaceutical suicide and suggested to Howard K. Stern that he shouldn't give her the chloral hydrate unless he wanted to see his face on the front page of the National Enquirer. Even still, the drugs were filled by the pharmacist and administered to Anna Nicole, who by all accounts was barely holding on. In January 2007, she told People magazine that every day and night she dreams of her son. She said, quote, "He comes to me in my sleep. It's like he's calling me to come to him." On February 5th, 2007, Anna Nicole and Howard K. Stern traveled from the Bahamas to Florida. Witnesses said when they checked into the Seminole Hard Rock Cafe, she appeared woozy and was held up by Stern when they walked through the lobby. Over the next few days, a hotel employee assigned to act as Anna Nicole's personal assistant was told that she had the flu. But when the hotel dispatched a local doctor to help treat her, they were turned away. Anna Nicole stayed holed up in the hotel room with a reported fever of 105. At one point, a housekeeper found her sitting naked and confused in an empty bathtub. On the morning of February 7th, Stern says Anna Nicole woke early and complained to him about fatigue. He helped her to the bathroom and then put her back in bed before leaving for an appointment to view a yacht that the couple was planning to buy. At 1 o'clock that afternoon, he received a phone call. Anna Nicole had been found by a private nurse and she was unresponsive. Less than 2 hours later, Anna Nicole Smith was pronounced dead at hospital. She was 39 years old. When she died, Anna Nicole Smith was surrounded by 44 different types of medication. They were scattered around the hotel room, spelling out the tragedy that had befallen yet another celebrity who didn't have the kind of people in her life who were willing to put a stop to things before it was too late. Some of the people who should have been protecting Anna Nicole did face charges following her death, but in the end, no one was really held accountable. Anna Nicole's psychiatrist, along with her doctor and her longtime lawyer and companion, Howard K. Stern, were all charged with various offenses, but they were either acquitted or had their convictions overturned. Anna Nicole's death left behind several other complicated legal battles. Immediately following her death, there was the matter over where she would be buried. A court hearing became a three-ring circus when Howard K. Stern, Anna Nicole's estranged mom, Virgie, and a court-appointed lawyer representing Danny Lynn argued over where her final resting place should be. Stern wanted her buried in the Bahamas beside her son Daniel, and Virgie wanted her daughter returned to Texas. The case made a celebrity out of the judge Larry Seidlin, a former cabbie from the Bronx, who became known as the Weeping Judge when he delivered his emotion-filled decision in the case.
I want her buried with her son in the Bahamas. I want them to be together.
As for the matter of Danny Lynn's paternity, in April 2007, 2 months after Anna Nicole's death, DNA test results revealed that Larry Burkhead was in fact the biological father. The 7-month-old baby was turned over to her dad, who took her to his home state of Kentucky to begin a life together. Meantime, the battle over J. Howard Marshall's estate continued with vigor, despite the fact that Pierce Marshall also died. 8 months before Anna Nicole's death, he succumbed to septic shock brought on by an infection. In his place, Pierce Marshall's widow, Elaine, continued the battle over the elder Marshall's estate. Finally, in 2011, the claim was dismissed by the Supreme Court, and the probate court officially closed the case in 2018. The estate of Anna Nicole Smith received no part of the vast fortune left behind by J. Howard Marshall. As for Danny Lynn, today she is a pretty 17-year-old straight-A student who lives with her father in Kentucky, where they have mostly stayed out of the spotlight. In May 2023, they were spotted at the Kentucky Derby. First at the Barnstable Brown Gala, that's where her parents met 20 years earlier. In honor of the occasion, Danny Lynn wore a top featuring photos from Anna Nicole's guest campaign. And the next day at the horse race, Danny Lynn wore a sunflower print dress, which she accessorized with a crystal necklace and bracelet from Anna Nicole's archives. It was a sweet tribute to the mom she never really knew, but who for the rest of us will always remain a larger-than-life 90s icon.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed our journey back to the 1990s with Kathy Kenzora. Kathy hosts the award-winning podcast History of the 90s, which has covered every person, event, and trend that really mattered in the 1990s, which, when you think about it, was a decade kind of like no other. The birth of the internet, the ways we communicated, the technology we used to do so, and so much more. On this podcast, Kathy does such an exceptional job taking us inside the lives and the events of these stories in such a captivating way. Today's certainly no exception. The life and times of Anna Nicole Smith. A tragic story when you really think about it. There are so many episodes for you to check out right now from this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, so I hope you will check them out and enjoy History of the 90s. That's going to do it for us this week on the show. I want to thank all of you who continue to send in your recommendations for podcasts that you've discovered and are really enjoying. That's the spirit of what we do here, so please keep them coming. We'll have another featured podcast episode for you next week on the show. And until then, from the Curious Cast Podcast Network, my name is Dunner. Thanks for spending some time with us. We'll see you next week.
From the National Newsroom of the Canadian Press, I'm John Kennedy. The United Nations General Assembly has scheduled an emergency meeting on Tuesday to vote on a draft resolution demanding immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. The Palestinian ambassador to the UN says it's similar to the Security Council resolution that the U.S. had vetoed last week. There are no vetoes in the General Assembly, but unlike the Security Council, its resolutions are not legally binding. They serve more as a barometer when it comes to global opinion. This comes as Israel indicates it's prepared to fight for months or longer to defeat Hamas and the rulers of Gaza as the Palestinian death toll surpasses 17,900 people. Quebec officials say work is ongoing to stabilize the provincially owned Moriere Dike that was showing signs of failing.
Officials say the situation remains stable at the dike located on the edge of the Kiamika Reservoir. Signs of erosion were noticed more than a week ago, and concerns over the dike bursting forced hundreds of people from their homes in the province's Laurentians region. Authorities have said that due to instability, displaced residents are under an evacuation order until December 17th. And government officials say while work may continue once they do return, that won't happen until the infrastructure is deemed safe. Brenda Molina Navidad, The Canadian Press.
British Columbia has announced a new 3-year action plan that includes building more housing for women and children leaving gender-based violence, expanding cell service to make traveling along the highways safer, and adding 75 new sexual assault support programs. Amy Fitzgerald, Executive Director of BC Society of Transition Houses, says the organization welcomes the investments, but it's still not enough.
We welcome investment and we welcome building new houses and assuring that women, children, and youth have a safe place to go when they make that brave choice to leave. That's the hardest choice. And when they make it, there should be accessible housing because no one should have to choose between homelessness and violence.
The province's plan also includes establishing a new free virtual counseling system, as well as a new 24/7 crisis line. The anime film The Boy and the Heron is #1 at the box office this weekend.
Dear mother, she's awaiting your rescue.
The Boy and the Heron, the latest film from legendary anime filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki, is the #1 draw for moviegoers this week. It debuted with $12.8 million in North American theaters, according to studio estimates. It's only the third anime to be #1 ever, and the first original anime to be #1. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is in second place. Godzilla -1 is third. Trolls Band Together is #4, and Wish is #5. I'm Margie Zaraletta.
This is the Canadian Press.
You're live with Get Connected. Mike Agarbo here. We are Canada's #1 radio show dedicated to technology. Trying to make it a little easier to understand. We got a great program today for you. Later on, we'll be talking about the CRTC. Canadian government looking to make the online streamers pay for Canadian content. The major broadcasters do, and now they're going after the Netflixes of the world. And as you can imagine, they are not happy about it. Netflix doesn't want to pay. Well, we'll get down into the weeds on that. We'll also be talking about how to up your skills when it comes to AI. I think a lot of people are always looking to get a better job. Well, there are different courses you can take, and we'll talk with the folks at Amazon on some free ones that can get you started. And finally, winter tire tech. Yes, I think we all know we need winter tires in Canada, but why? What's the difference with the tires, and why is it more important to have a winter tire, and what is the different, materials in there and the tread? I think once you understand that, I think you'll appreciate why you should do this, especially in Western Canada, because we don't seem to ever put our winter tires on. I've got my good friend Carmi Levy with me today out of Toronto. Thanks for joining me, Carmi.
Great to be here, Mike. You know, winter tire. I grew up in Montreal, and they don't mess around. The government forces you to put winter tires on. You're not even allowed to be on the road if you don't have them. And I understand why it's the scariest thing in the world is driving with tires that are inadequate in the middle of a winter storm. Not fun at all.
Well, inadequate would describe Vancouver when it comes to winter tire. Like I know so many people just don't. Maybe around February, March, they're like, yeah, I should probably get some winter tires on. But I know in like Ontario and Quebec, 100%, like, they are ready. They are ready for the season. But here in Vancouver, anytime anyone thinks about it, it's the first major snowstorm when, chaos ensues, because no one's got winter tires.
Not fun. Everyone should, maybe take a spin into a snowbank at least once to understand what that feels like. That'll learn them. Honestly, this is the technology I will not give up on with my car. Every year, got to make the change.
No, that'll happen in Vancouver, but no, they won't learn. I don't know why. Let's get into some of the tech news, Carmi. And I think this is probably the most important tech news item this week. Kiss, the band, is debuting immortal digital avatars. It looks like they're going to stop touring physically, and they've created digital avatars to go fully virtual. Thank God. Mm-hmm. Thank God.
Well, they're getting on in years, right? They're in their 70s, I think, and they've been touring and putting out music for 40 plus years. I mean, this is a generational band. At some point, you just can't do it anymore. I know we marvel at the Rolling Stones, but at some point, they're also going to have to retire. And so, what they've done is they've partnered with this company called Pop House Entertainment. And Pop House Entertainment, we may not have heard of them, but they're already working with ABBA on something similar. They created a digital version of ABBA, and they call it the ABBA Voyage Show. And it's touring, and it's making them $2 million every week. So clearly it's profitable, and clearly fans like this. And they are now saying that at the end of their latest tour, 4 years, they just closed out at Madison Square Garden. They put up a video on stage toward the end showing that essentially they're doing the same thing. And so they'll create these digital avatars of them, and then those digital avatars will go on tour. And of course, the real members will probably be sitting poolside somewhere, collecting royalties from this.
Counting their money.
Exactly. But you know what? Hey, and we had this similar discussion when we went to see Taylor Swift with her Eras movie, and a lot of people going, well, why wouldn't you just go to the concert? I'm like, well, because A, concert tickets aren't available to everyone, and B, this is an experience too. It's a different kind of experience. It's not an in-person concert, but you know what? Do you have fun? Do you dance? Do you get into it? I think for most fans, it's a digital era experience of a beloved band. There's nothing wrong with that. And the difference here is that the band has signed off on it. They're giving their permission. They're an integral part of it. This isn't somebody ripping off their intellectual property. This is, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons and crew basically saying, we can't do this anymore. We're too old, but we still want people to enjoy our stuff. There's a digital answer to this. And I'm thinking that's kind of cool. They'll live on. Why not?
Let's move on to Netflix now. Carmi, Netflix looks like the government with the Online Streaming Act wants the streamers to pay more money for Canadian content. Netflix is pushing back, saying, whoa, we already spend gazillions of dollars on creating content in Canada, and they're not wrong. They have major service productions happening throughout the country, especially in Vancouver and Toronto, because they get a great deal. The exchange rate plus all the Canadian government tax incentives to get them up here. It's almost like 50 cents on the dollar in many cases. But I think what they're missing is that the Canadian government wants the money to go towards Canadian content, not, the latest American series or blockbuster movie.
Exactly. They don't just want a movie filmed north of the border because it's cheap and then that becomes global content. They want to tell Canadian stories by Canadian artists using Canadian production professionals. That's CanCon. And this goes back to the early days of radio when the government stepped in and through the CRTC mandated that Canadian content would receive radio airplay. And thus an entire industry was born. I don't think anyone can argue with how successful that has been. Same thing with television and film. And so traditional broadcasters, traditional content producers have been subject to these rules for generations. In the digital era, the government just wants to make sure that these streaming platforms are on the hook for that. So sure, Netflix has spent, it says, $5 billion over the last 5 years. It has employed 800 people on these productions in that time frame, and that's all laudable. But the thing is, if you don't have a law like the Online Streaming Act, which used to be known as Bill C-11, if you don't have a law in place like that, then as soon as the exchange rate, for example, shifts, as soon as economic conditions change, guess what? That $5 billion starts going to some other country because there's no law that compels them to be active in this market. So having a law in place requires streamers to basically adhere to similar rules as everyone else has. The government wants to ensure that Canadian stories get told. The government wants to ensure that everyone who's producing those Canadian stories and making money off of them has a stake in the industry here. Don't just come and sell subscriptions, take all those profits and disappear. You're part of the industry. You should contribute back to it no matter what the economic conditions are. So they're saying, we don't want to spend it. We're already, but the government is essentially saying, no, you have to, and Netflix ultimately will. They're just whining a little bit because they don't like when they have to pay something they didn't previously have to.
Wow, a corporation that doesn't want to spend extra money on.
Imagine that. Yeah,
crazy. Okay, we got a lot more to talk about later on. Also, we're going to be talking about Google's new AI. Yes, They have a new AI. We'll tell you what that's all about, and with some additional stories about Doritos and AI, which again I think is a very important newsy topic. Don't forget to enter our contest. We are giving away a $1,000 smart security system from TELUS. This is a great prize package: 2 indoor cameras, a doorbell camera, and a few smart light bulbs as well. Plus, we have a secret word at the end of the show that we're going to give you that can get you extra entries into the contest. GetConnectedMedia.com is the place to go. We'll be back after this.
You're back with Get Connected. Mike Hagerbo here. We do have a really cool contest going on right now, giving away $1,000 in smart home security hardware from TELUS Smart Home Security at our website, getconnectedmedia.com. That's everything you need to make your home more secure. And if you want some extra entries, you're going to have to stick around till the end of the program, because we do have a secret word for you that will get you extra entries. And we still got a few more segments left as well. We'll be talking about winter tire tech. What's the difference technology-wise between a summer and a winter tire? It's really interesting stuff. And Google has a new AI engine, and we'll tell you what it's all doing. We're going to talk about improving your digital skills, always a good thing to do, and especially with all the technology advancing so quickly when it comes to computing, cloud computing, and I think the hot buzzword now, AI. And Amazon Web Services actually has an entire program around this. There's so many different courses that they offer that you can take, in a lot of free ones as well. To help us understand all of it, we got Coral Kennett with us from Amazon Web Services. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
I think what you guys are doing is really cool. Like, people can really learn some interesting stuff online, and so many different facets. And now you guys are really leaning into AI. Well, not now, but you've been leaning into AI for a while now, artificial intelligence. So people who want to learn more about that can actually take some courses around that online.
That's right. Yes. So we've launched our new AI Ready program with 8 new courses on AI. Both for technical people as well as non-technical people who are interested in learning more about AI. So really trying to give a lot of options for people who are interested and want to learn more. We also have a new scholarship program that we've just launched for students, $12.5 million of scholarships. And then also a partnership with code.org to do an AI hour of code dance party. And that's for
an AI dance party?
AI dance party. Yeah. That's even for kids as young as kindergarten can participate in that. So it's really trying to provide lots of different options.
Well, what I found interesting, you talked about folks that already have a lot of digital skills, but you also go right down to the bottom level for people that just want to get into it and start learning. So someone with no experience can get into learning about AI?
Absolutely, they can. And one of the things that came out of our recent skills report is that employers are really looking for people with AI skills. And one of the areas that they think is going to be the most applicable are things like sales and marketing. So, if you're in marketing, you might not think that these AI courses are for you, but they are, because we're really looking for ways to help people understand how they can use AI. What are the use cases? How can you use these tools to gain efficiencies in your organization? So it's definitely for all kinds of different learners.
It's really interesting at how good these courses are. I met a woman at your reInvent conference. She was with the Builders Fair, and she made this really cool box for her father who's disabled, that he could just push buttons to tell his wife and caregivers how he was feeling because he couldn't speak properly. And so she developed this on her own through the Builders Fair program that Amazon has, that they encourage their employees to kind of create some cool stuff. But her background, she used to own a bakery. Mm-hmm. And so she sold her bakery and thought, I really want to get into the digital world. And so she went through the Skill Builder program, just took a bunch of digital courses, and now works for Amazon.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
It's so cool. And so when you say anyone can learn these, like, do you have to have any digital experience? Does it help?
You really don't. I mean, it depends on which area you're trying to go into. So we do have a lot of people that have IT backgrounds who are looking to gain different types of IT skills. And so some of the courses that we have really are a bit more of a deep dive into how to code in AI and how to really get into the details. But there's so many courses that are more about the business use cases for AI and how to make it fun And like your story, I met somebody who had never used any of these tools before, and they got a hold of our Deep Lens, which is a camera that has machine learning embedded into it, but it's very easy to start using and playing with. And they used it for their doggy door because they had raccoons that were coming into their yard. So it was to stop the raccoons coming in. It would only let it in if it was a dog and not a raccoon. So it was somebody who had never used AI before.
But isn't it amazing we're so far advanced now that all these tools are available that you can just kind of create these things just kind of with a bit of training?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we see this all the time because in my area in education, we work with students a lot. So one example of that is we have a Cloud Innovation Center at the University of British Columbia. And we have students who come there. They've never used cloud before. They're obviously very smart students, but they don't have experience using AWS. And they come, we give them, a week or two of training, and then a project to work on, and they go off and build some really, really amazing things very, very quickly. So it's just really enabling them and getting the tools into their hands. And that's what we're trying to do with AI Ready as well.
Tell me about the scholarships again. You're giving away like $12 million in scholarships.
Absolutely. So we are trying to get high school students access to these tools as well. So we have a partnership with Udemy, and they will be able to apply for these scholarships. They go into our Deep Racer console actually and do some training. So Deep Racer is a way to get machine learning skills by racing virtual cars. So it's very fun.
But then you can race real little.
And then you can race real little cars. Yep, that's it, which is even more fun. So they go into the console, they do some of the training courses on machine learning. And at the end of that, they get a certificate where they can go to Udemy, where we have a partnership. So we're trying to get 50,000 students access to these courses through the scholarship fund.
It's really amazing stuff there. But that's mostly aimed at kind of younger high school students.
High school students, yeah.
Yeah. Where are you guys going next with this?
We plan to keep adding more and more courses. So we have a program called Skill Builder, and you can find it at skillbuilder.aws, which has more than 600 courses actually. So these new courses that we've just launched, the 8 new ones, are specific to AI. But we are always continuing to add lots and lots more content for people to be able to have access to whatever it is that they're interested in, like cybersecurity or IoT, Internet of Things. Really so many different options depending on what it is that you're looking for. So we're going to continue to add to that, as well as more game-based options to make really fun ways for people to start to conceptualize how they can use these tools.
Yeah, like the course is a kind of a game.
That's right. Yeah. Like Cloud Quest.
I can wrap my head around that. But just amazing some of the tools that you guys have come up with. One of them that I came across, PartyRock.ai,
yes,
which is like this web-based app tool that will just instantly help create an AI-based app for you. I made a dog namer. Like it just took like 1 minute.
Yeah.
But it was just so cool how you just kind of went through it, and it would just create this kind of thing. So I know a lot of people get scared about all these new technologies, and especially AI, but you got to lean into it. These are new tools, and they can do some amazing things.
Absolutely. And Party Rock is very cool. And I think it's a great way to get a lot of people access and really starting to think about these new use cases. And that's what I'm most excited about is, trying to figure out how are people going to start to use these things, and how are they going to transform some of the ways that we live and work and learn, and really start to envision the ways that they can use them, because the technology, shouldn't be intimidating. I mean, there's lots of different ways to build these things, but it's just really, what are you going to do with it? And some of the students that we've worked with come up with really, really interesting ideas. So.
Well, that's Coral Kennett. I want to thank you for joining us. Where can people find out more information about all these courses?
So skillbuilder.aws is the best place to start. That's where you can find all of the different courses that we have. And then also through some of our partners, code.org is where you can find the AI Hour of Code dance party as well.
Got to do the dance party.
Got to do the dance party.
We still have a lot more to talk about today on Get Connected. We will be looking at winter tire tech. I know we all have to get winter tires, especially here in Canada, but why? Like, what is the difference between a summer tire and a winter tire? Well, we're going to dive into the technology around that with the folks over at Michelin. And we're going to talk about Google's new AI. Yes, they have a new one called Gemini. What does it do? What does it all mean? Well, we'll give you the explanation on that because you will be using it in the future. Don't forget, we have a really cool contest going on right now, giving away $1,000 worth of smart home security, a few cameras. We've got a doorbell camera as well. And we will be giving a secret word away at the end of the program, so you have to stay tuned. And that secret word will get you extra entries into the contest. The contest is at getconnectedmedia.com, so get up there and enter. When we come back from the break, more tech. Stay tuned.